From the floor of the CME Group, this is Danny Riley with today's Cash Close. And the name of this video, traders, the S&P 500 futures, China pushback, and the PPT behind the curtain. The high of the day in the S&P came at 2084.5 late in the day, or just recently. The low came in at 2047 even early morning, and last we're 2081.70. We're up two handles on the day. Total volume, 2.4 million minis trade and 9,000 big S&Ps trade in the pit. MOC, the memo's given weak readings, started out like 63 million to sell, got to 110 million to sell, and the actual MOC came out sell 340 million. Tomorrow we've got the jobless claims, we got the retail sales number, we have the import-export prices, we have the EIA natural gas report, we have a 5-year TIPS, and we have a 30-year bond auction. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here, traders. You know, where did all the panic go here? And obviously there was quite a lot of panic over the last couple of days. And then when you look back, you see Monday up, and then you see Tuesday down hard, you see Wednesday down hard, and then you see a complete reversal by the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. I think the Dow was down 227 points at its low of the day, and it actually ended up closing higher on the day. So again, where did all the panic go? Well, I'll tell you where all the panic went. I think the PPT stepped back in. I really do. Now, why do I say that? Because I think as we get into this closer into this cycle of raising interest rates, the last thing the Fed wants to see is the market Columbia to the downside. So, excuse me. So, was there any government intervention in there today? It looked like it was. You know, one of the things that I really couldn't believe is how the S&P sold off as hard as it did early in the morning. You know, getting all the way down under 2050. And I went out on the Twitter, and I went out into the room, and I told people that, one, the S&P tends not to do what everybody wants it to do when they want it to happen. And two, that I thought that the S&P was extremely oversold, and that we were still sitting at the 2050 level. And I even went out on Twitter and I made a bet to people saying something like, give me odds on the S&P going back to 2068 to 2070. And very few people would even make a market for it. I think I got a 5-to-1 market. And then as soon as the futures started popping up above 2065, no one wanted to sell them. And then the S&P just kept going up and up and up and up. You know, now we've seen a lot of big moves lately, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm still in that camp that says we're not going to crash. I know that everybody out there gets very bearish, and you know, there's reason to, you know, all this China intervention. And at the end of the day, I still believe in the United States, why our markets are so somewhat firm is that there's still zero borrowing cost here. And even the idea that there could be a rate hike in the future is kind of uncertain right now. But that said, you know what? I'm going to finish this off by telling you one thing. There's no doubt that yesterday on the close that there were margin calls that went out. Now, what happens is these margin calls, because of the new regulations, they have to be settled on or before the open of the next day. So what this causes is a lot of selling. People can't come up with the money for these positions. They dump the positions. Or what they do is they roll them lower, or they hedge with the S&P futures. Once all this happened this morning and the futures traded down, again, we saw a mammoth capitulation at the lows of the day. And once all that selling pressure was removed, and knowing that there was over 435,000 minis traded in Globex, it told me that everybody had already sold. And thus, I thought the markets were going back up. Now, I'm going to conclude this by saying that I wouldn't doubt that the S&P can trade back down a little bit, but I'm going to remind everybody again and again and again about the Pitbull's Thursday, Friday low before the August expiration as a potential low and a move back up in the next week. We'll leave it like that. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the opening print.